What's up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here, and today we're gonna find out the Trash Panda Procyon, the first driver in the Trash Panda lineup. Did Trash Panda cook with this one? Or should Jesse go back to the drawing board? We're gonna find out. Spoiler alert, we already know because this is the second time we're shooting this video. But we'll talk about that in a second. So before we gotta ask the most important question of the day, how you doing today, Casey? You having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
Okay, so we filmed an unboxing of the Trash Panda Procyon on Monday of this week. We took it out to the field, threw it. Feel like we were throwing well. We actually made a reel about it because we ended up throwing our Procyon on top of a roof, and let me tell you, it wasn't good. So we were able to retrieve it, which was nice. And when I sent the footage off to the editing team over at Old Foundation, they reported back and let me know that something had happened with my camera and I had taken the shutter speed all the way from a whopping 125. Well, what if we just dropped the 1 and the 5? Yeah, it was low. So we basically had the video in stop motion and basically it was unusable. So here we are, actually in Snellville, Georgia at Lenore Park with the Procyons. Ready to test it out, ready to show it off. But we had one other little hitch in it. You see, with the ET2, something we did was Jesse understands that, you know, as disc reviews, we want to make sure that we get multiple shots, and sometimes you don't throw it that well. So Jesse's always a kind soul, and he sends 2 in the packages to creators, something that I think pretty much anyone sending discs out should consider, but we like to pay it forward. So what I like to do is I like to take one of the discs that we get sent and I hide it on the course where I shoot the initial review and just leave it there. I don't mark it, I don't do anything. I just leave it there for someone to discover and hopefully discover a brand new brand and fall in love with a new disc. And we did that with the Procyon. Unfortunately, we also got rid of the packaging that originally came in. So I can't even show off the awesome work that Tom did making this beautiful setup. And I only had 2 Procyons. I then only had 1 Procyon, but thankfully my neighbor, also a disc golfer and a great human being, he's a member of Trash Panda's Patreon group, so free advertisement here. They have a prototype testers level on their Patreon where you get early access, which is why we have one of those Procyons that Ryan has been throwing and using for quite a bit of time, which means that I have a seasoned Procyon as well as a first run Procyon, which you can tell based on that impact. So today we're gonna see, because we're gonna see if the runs are different, we're gonna see how the flight's affected, and really just take a look at the Procyon. Now, I have heard this disc compared most often to another very popular mold, so I wanted to make sure that we kind of gave it a chance to shine on its own. And then at the end of the video, I'm gonna bring out, because I actually bagged that really popular mold, and I want to compare it side by side so that you guys can see, does it actually hold up? Is that a fair comparison? And should that disc be worried? Because once again, we've already shot this video. Spoiler alert. Yes, it should be worried. Now I've got several thoughts here in terms of the hand feel, in terms of the plastic type, but you guys, I know. You want to see these discs fly. You want to see, are they good for beginners? What are they going to do for beginners? What are they going to do for this arm speed? That's what we're here to tell you. Because unlike Sir Broderick, who did get to assign flight numbers, which is a fun addition because that video has now come out since I recorded my first one. So the flight numbers that have been assigned are 11.5, 4 glide, -1 turn, 2 fade. But let's see how these do on the old bear. And this is the fresh one, the run one, the one we got sent in the box that was not given away. Okay. Didn't really get a hold of it too much. Threw it kind of nosy, but just dead straight for most of its flight. And then, yeah, just kind of faded off at the end. Now, the seasoned one, let's see how it does. Okay, what's interesting is I got a hold of the seasoned one worse than I did the fresh one, and it still had some turn to it, which is nice. I like that. especially because of the slot that I think it fills in the driver category. Now let's talk hand feel, because it is an 11 speed. And I think that something to note about this disc is that it is a driver. There are other molds inside of the Trash Panda lineup that traditionally the Trash Panda lineup has been more on the understable or the neutral to understable side, right? We have the Dune and the inner cores, the first initial launches, the Ozone, definitely on the understable side. And then the Canyon sort of shook things up for an overstable mid-range, but we haven't had a driver yet. And I think for lots of folks, if you have a disc like the Ozone from the Trash Panda lineup, it's very beginner friendly. It's very, very friendly because if you maybe don't have the arm speed to carry the 8-speed aspect of it, the understability makes it easier to throw. Whereas, as you can see on those first 2 drives even, I didn't get a hold of it. I didn't throw it incredibly well. And that's part of the reason why Broderick was the one to sign the flight numbers, because he throws well, or he throws consistently well. Yeah, that. So it has that driver feel, and I would say it's a pretty decent sized rim. I have very large hands, and so with these large hands, I feel like I can get around it, but it feels very much like a driver, which is good. As a spoiler alert to Tuesday's video, the disc that we talked about in Tuesday's video has a wide rim as well. It's a 10-speed, just doesn't feel as nearly sharp or as driver-ish as this one feels. So that's certainly an interesting thing. And now another piece that I think was super interesting about the hand feel that in talking with Jesse, I was very curious about is just the shape overall. This is a pretty unique shape. And I think that I have seen this in really 2 other molds came to mind. And it's funny because when Jesse and I were talking about it, he mentioned one of them, but he hadn't really felt the other one. And so it has this like alien orbit sort of top to it. So there is the rim here, and then there's this, I'm not gonna call it a bubble because I think that has a negative connotation to it, but it definitely has some more shape to it on the top side. And I was curious if this was run specific, but even in feeling Ryan's other one, that still exists. Now, I initially thought, okay, I wonder how this is gonna feel on a forehand, and we'll talk about the forehand here after another set of backhand throws. But I'll go ahead and tell you, spoiler again, it really didn't bother me much at all. I just thought it was a unique look. And we know that this has been successful because it, once again, is in other molds. So the 2 molds that came to mind that it was, also had a similar top shape to it, were the Vulcan by Innova Discs, as well as the Adder by Westside Discs. Now I think the Adder had a very aggressive version of this, almost to a fault. This seems to be consistent. These discs were run months apart from each other, and yet still very similar shape. And with that one seasoning in, it hasn't caused the shape to become overly aggressive one way or the other. So I definitely think it's unique. And if you're someone who really likes a shallow thumb on your forehand, this could be perfect for you for a forehand disc. But I keep teasing the forehand. Let's go one more set of backhand throws because I want to talk about the distance thresholds that I think this really matters for the backhand throwers, because I think the forehand is where the disc is really going to shine for most people. I really wish I was as cool as Simon Lizotte and I could do like that mid run up, but that was about as impressive as an athletic feat that I'm going to do in trick shot world. All right, backhands. Okay, so there, we definitely got over on Anheuser on it. And you could see that it never really thought about fighting out of it, which is curious. We're gonna talk about Anheuser in a second, but let's try to go a flat angle, see what we can do. That's much better. Okay, so we got a hold of that one. That was the seasoned one. We definitely got a hold of both of those Procyon throws. And you can see when you sort of overpower them that Anheuser really shows up here. Down at sea level, it doesn't necessarily have the bite to fight out of the Anheuser, which I think is impactful. Now, second thing that I want to talk about is the plastic type. Trash Panda has been critiqued for their plastic, their premium plastic in the past, because you have the Ozone in the premium plastic, which I think felt really good, but I know a lot of people said it was too slick. They couldn't get a really good grip on it. And then they pivoted with the Canyon, and they had a very grippy, usable plastic, and then everyone was like, it's too gummy. So in this effort of a Goldilocks treatment, where they couldn't seem to find the right balance, they've been working really hard on this blend. And I think they've absolutely nailed it. Both times that I've come out to film this video, I'm filming in the south. So there is humidity all over this place, and grip should be an issue, especially on forehand. But this plastic blend feels so good that I'm not noticing a grip issue hardly at all, which is fantastic. So I think by far the best feeling premium plastic that Trash Panda has released ever really shines on this mold. All right, let's look at Procyon 371 feet to the yellow basket. We just hit the pole. What a laser, like super low laser right at it. Let's try to give it a little more height and see if we can't. Here we go with the seasoned one. Oh, that's mercy. Okay, well that went kind of far. So one thing that I really like about the Procyon is that on a forehand, you get that immediate flip up. Like when I threw that first forehand, it was low. And I think if I was throwing the disc we're about to talk about, then I think that that stand up wouldn't have happened so fast. And I would have been worried that it was just gonna bite into the ground. But it stood up for me and then just held laser straight enough. Then 371 hole, 771 foot hole, wow, that was hard to say. Not hard to throw though. And carried and ended up smacking into the pole. That feels phenomenal. Like I love that feeling. And on a forehand, I think this thing really shines. If you're someone who doesn't have the biggest forehand in the world, but you're looking for that pushing distance forehand, I think on a backhand, yeah, you're gonna need a certain amount of distance push. But on a forehand, this thing wants to help you, but it still has that fade at the end. Like you could see that all of those forehands actually pushed and faded really nicely. Look at these drives. We came in, skipped off the pole, and this was the first run. Bang. And then I really want to measure this out because it says 371. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 36 past. It's not as good a putter as it is a forehand disc. That thing's rolling to eternity. Oof, it is still rolling. There it is, finally settled down. Yeah, like, I love a world where we're stepping up to a 371 foot hole and we're going bang, hit metal with the new one, and then the seasoned one, we just try to give a little more height to, and it carries 400 feet. You're trying to tell me you don't want an easy 400 foot forehand in your bag? Really? Now, there is a disc that I think that this Procyon compares to, and like I've teased, it's one that I have in my bag because a phrase that has been used in my family since we found disc golf in 2012 is that you're not a Crawford unless you love a Wraith. Now the Wraith boasts flight numbers of 11.5 -1.3, so it should have a little more fade and a little more glide, but in theory, not require as much speed to throw in order to get maximum flight potential out of it than what they have assigned to the Procyon. And I think part of me agrees with that if we're talking fresh Wraith to a fresh Procyon. Unfortunately, I do think that the Wraith probably has a little bit more of an overstable flight in the fresh form, but my seasoned Wraith is getting more movement than the fresh Procyon, but not as much movement as the not fresh Procyon. So I want to show you guys a couple backhands, and then I want to show you forehands side by side of the Procyon to the Wraith so that you can get an accurate comparison, because I know there's a lot of Wraith lovers out there. Obviously myself, this is from my first ever run that we did with Foundation. We did it on this, It, and Pigs. Phenomenal disc. I've actually been really excited to have this Wraith back in my bag, and unfortunately I think it's already in trouble with the Procyon. But let's see the flights. All right, so let's go Procyons first. We're gonna start with the fresh Procyon, and we're gonna try to throw these flat out in that direction, and then we'll throw some Anheuser shots to also show you sort of what they look like. But we're trying to go flat to start here. There it is. Yep. I would say that is a perfectly flat shot. You can see that it started a little bit right, but then obviously with the height and the hill running away from it, has time to fade. Let's try the seasoned one. Threw that one quite a bit more nose up, didn't get a hold of it near as well. And you can see that that driver aspect really carries in. Now let's take a look at the Wraiths. We're gonna go with the fresh Wraith first because I think that it is the starkest contrast to the Procyon. Trying to go flat. And you can see that it's only moving right because I pulled it right. It was fading. That side had dropped a little bit the entire flight. Just more overstable than the fresh Procyon for sure. And then now seasoned Wraith, let's see what she does. Okay, probably the worst thrown out of all of them. And the straightest flight out of all of them. So you have this conundrum of, if you put a lot of time into seasoning a Wraith, and once again, that Wraith is 3 years old. Yeah, very tough disc to replace until the Procyon came out. And now it flies straight out of the manufacturer's hands. Similar flights without even hitting it as well. Fascinating. But really, in my experiments with the Procyon, what has shown to me the most is that the Anheuser angle is where you really start to see the difference between the Wraith and the Procyon, because if thrown poorly, that driver element, I keep saying it over and over again, because I think for lots of people, you're like, hey, I really love Trash Panda, I really want to support Trash Panda, I can throw this driver. And at the end of the day, it's an 11 to 12 speed, it's 11 and a half speed. So if you don't get it up to speed, it's just gonna be overstable. If you're not throwing more than 250 feet, if you're in that 250 to 300 foot range, I think this is a fun utility disc, but certainly not one that you should be throwing every round, because I think you're just gonna get easier flights out of something else like the Ozone. However, if you're throwing that 300 to 350 range, this is where you're really gonna have perhaps your first driver that you can get a hold of and really start to see it shine. I like to look at this spread. Seasoned Wraith, fresh. Yeah, these all coming out. Not too bad of a spread from that far away. And then obviously, if you're someone who throws in the 350 plus range, I think this is a disc that you can definitely look at and lean into, and you're gonna be able to get some flights out of it. And because I wouldn't describe it as inherently super overstable, but I also wouldn't say, oh man, this is like a super flippy driver. I think that you're gonna be able to get some pretty nice niche max distances out of it, which is pretty awesome. But the Anheuser, like I said, is where this disc shines, because I think on the Anheuser, you're going to see that once it gets into Anheuser, it really doesn't have the fade to fight out of it like a Wraith often can. So we're actually gonna start with the Wraiths this time, and we're gonna try to throw some Anheusers and just flex them sort of at that hill. And Anheuser is absolutely my worst angle. So that's why you definitely didn't see much Anheuser out of that. Yeah, that one we pulled on much more Anheuser, and then it's gonna have time and it's gonna fight out. Now, let's see with the Procyons. We're gonna start with the seasoned Procyon because it compares mostly to that one we just held through. Much quicker turn to the right. You could just see that even the Wraith, the seasoned Wraith, turned for me, but then it came out at the end of the shot. The champion Wraith didn't throw it well, and it just kind of flexed out on us the whole time. So this is a fresh Procyon. Let's try to see if it lands between the seasoned Wraith. Yeah. So right in the middle, kind of gives you your spread. Seasoned Procyon, seasoned new Procyon, seasoned Wraith, fresh Wraith. Now once again, I'll be the first to admit that I didn't throw the fresh champ Wraith well, but this is I think just an accurate comparison of when you try to put yourself next to Broderick, he throws farther than most people who watch YouTube videos. And so you don't really get the blue collar, the guy out there in the trenches with you guys. Noodle arms, we unite. And this is a realistic look at trying to throw this disc, which I think is important, especially trying to throw this disc at sea level. Now, when we talk about the forehand in comparison, I think that the forehand, like I said, is where the Procyon shines. So if you look at these Procyon forehands that we threw earlier, we also ended up throwing Wraiths on the same hole. So we'll put a fresh Wraith side by side with the fresh Procyon, and you can see that the fresh Wraith gets to the ground just significantly faster. It fades, has reliable fade. It has this like single angle hyzer sort of pushing. I don't really feel like it stood up too much. It just went and then skipped. It faded. It did exactly what it was supposed to do on a forehand. However, when you put the seasoned Procyon alongside the seasoned Wraith, both of them stand up, which allows you to push some easier distance, but still having some fade. Now, I will say that the seasoned Procyon didn't really fade that much, which is important because, yeah, if you're looking for that fade or that reliable hit, then you may want to go to a different disc if you're pushing those distances. However, I think if you're not throwing 350-foot forehands on single angle, then I think it's going to be a phenomenal distance help for you along the way. I look at, for instance, the boss of a human being who's editing this video, Trevor, who recently put the wild honey back in his bag because that man throws beautiful forehands with the wild honey. I do believe that the Procyon could be a phenomenal sort of next step up from the wild honey, because trying to forehand a wild honey in the wind sounds like a terrifying idea. But the Procyon, as you can see with those forehands, has such a natural sort of flip up on it that I really think it would hold. It would be a similar vibe of what something like a wild honey wants to do on a forehand, while still having quite a bit more fade without having to feel like you have to throw it on a ton of hyzer in order to create that fade. So, final thoughts? Well, I think that as someone who loves the Wraith, I think this is a great disc. I think it's very fun. I very rarely have like super fresh Wraiths in my bag. Usually I'm jumping over a Champ Wraith to a Halo Wraith if I'm doing that. But also I have seasoned destroyers that fly very similar to brand new Wraiths. And as someone who loves to be sort of cycling through molds, my Wraiths, my very seasoned Wraiths, are tough to replace. For instance, this guy and the other Wraith that I have in my bag right now, my purple Wraith, are just discs that I absolutely love, and I'm so nervous whenever I throw them. That was until I got to throw the Procyon. Funny enough, when Ryan got this Trash Panda prototype, he actually was like, do you want to throw it? And I said, no, I'd rather wait for my first impressions to be on camera. And then I messed up the shutter speed. What a silly man I am. But instantly, I'm okay throwing this on riskier lines because I know that this is standing in the weight, ready to go. So I think if you're someone looking for a fun driver and you want to support a great company, this is it. But if you don't throw super far, I would just warn you, it is a driver and it flies like a driver, especially when you don't get it up to speed. So make sure that you know what you're kind of stepping into, and know that there's going to be moments like that Wraith where you try to throw on an Anheuser and the driver takes over. And then there's going to be moments where you absolutely crush this thing and it goes super far. And you're supporting a great company. So unfortunately in Lenore Park, I have this Procyon in the bag so that I can keep testing and messing around with it, and the other one belongs to my friend Ryan. So I can't stow this Procyon here, but you know what I can do? I can step up to hole 2 with this Champ Wraith straight from a subscription box of foundation, and I can try to do one of these numbers. And we leave it there for the next person to find it. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Jesse for supporting what we're doing here on the Robbie C channel, and for just making an amazing company and amazing plastic. You know, not a lot of people that I want to get out and shoot the same disc review for twice, but the people deserve to know. And the Procyon it's a blast. And I hope you guys have as much fun throwing it. I really thought we might have had an ace, which would have been sick. Probably not the first Procyon ace, because someone's probably already claimed that somewhere, but It would have been cool. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. And if you are at Lenora Park and you found that Wraith, leave a comment down below. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.